The Work Health and Safety Act, the ACT's Work Health and Safety Act, requires that employers put in place a safe working environment. The legislation puts the primary responsibility for that on employers. Employers, after all, have the most control over what goes on in a workplace. Other parties have responsibilities as well. Workers have responsibilities. Even other people have responsibilities. But the primary responsibility is with the employer. Now, there is a constraint on that responsibility. The legislation says that employers must take all reasonably practicable steps to provide that safe working environment. I guess the thing I would encourage you to think about when you think about that term reasonably is don't think of what you think is reasonable that you do. Think what might happen if you end up in a court and you're trying to convince a magistrate that you've done everything you could reasonably do. He may have a different perspective on it. Another important consideration, and this is a very relevant one for the real estate industry, is what is this work that we talk about, this work environment? Work happens at the workplace, but the workplace, by definition in the legislation, is any place where work is being conducted. In the real estate industry, clearly that involves work in the office, but it also often involves work outside of the office, even in other people's homes. Now, the best way to meet your responsibility to provide a safe working environment is to do a risk assessment. You should sit down, identify the risks that your workers are likely to face, what you might be able to assess those risks and work out which ones are ones that could be a threat to those workers, work out what you could reasonably do to either eliminate those risks or, more likely, to minimise those risks. Then put in place arrangements to do that, to minimise those risks. Finally, you must then review those arrangements. Make sure that they're actually being followed, make sure that they're working, make sure that circumstances haven't changed, and you actually need to go back and review them. Maybe they're not applicable anymore, maybe the whole environment has changed. The other thing I would then say is, don't forget, as I said at the beginning, your workers also have responsibilities. The employer has the primary responsibility, but your workers have a responsibility to make sure that they take reasonable care of their own safety, and they need to ensure that they comply with any reasonable safety procedures that an employer has. So the very act of creating safety procedures puts some responsibility on your workers to comply with those. I mentioned other people right at the beginning. The safe working environment that employers must create must be safe for workers and any other people that may be affected by the work that's being conducted. That could include members of the public. So you have a responsibility towards these other people. They also have responsibilities. They must take reasonable care of their own safety, and they must comply with any reasonable safety instructions that you put in place. So I guess as a concluding point, I would say two things. Don't forget that your contractors, people that you contract work out to, are also your workers, so you have a responsibility to them. And don't forget that although you have to take only what's reasonable in terms of steps to secure safety, make sure that that reasonable test is one that would be supported by other parties, not just in your own mind. And finally, if you want to know more about health and safety, try our website, worksafe.act.gov.au. You'll find a wealth of information there to help you. Thank you.